Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rhett, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Now, I've actually been talking to the organizers and the speaker himself, and we're all very much excited to share with all of you guys what we have prepared for today's event. And as a matter of fact, this is being live streamed on different social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So go ahead and share your excitement by giving us some love and heart reacts, like and comment as well if you may. And actually, if you want to share this with as many people as you can, go ahead and share the link of this live stream to the people who you think will be interested in our topic for today. But of course, before we begin, if any of you have any questions regarding the discussion, don't hesitate to send them to us by commenting on the comment section of whatever social media platform you are watching this on. And of course, I will be here to cater to them for our guest speaker. Welcome to the live webinar series of ESME.ph, an e-learning marketplace for Filipino professionals where one can develop relevant and in-demand skills through master classes in different fields of learning. And if you want to know more about us, feel free to visit our page at www.sme.ph. Once again, that's www.sme.ph. For those who are watching this on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, once again, feel free to share this link to the live stream to as many people as you think will enjoy and interest themselves in our topic for today. This webinar is actually in partnership with the ASEAN Youth Organization, an ASEAN-approved nonprofit organization that spreads awareness of ASEAN to over 200 million young people in Southeast Asia alone. This webinar is also brought to you by the Rotary Club of Alabang Madrigal Business Park. Thank you so much to our sponsors and partners for making this event possible. For today, our topic will touch the field of being able to adjust and learn in different circumstances when it comes to working. Of course, our world is rapidly changing, right? So we experience new ways and methods in our work fields, but we also need to acquire new skills and capabilities in order for us to adapt in the changing industry and times. So, to give us some tips and new learnings about the work environment, our guest is a learning and development specialist who assesses brands' needs and formulates their training plans for the workforce. He completed his degree in behavioral science in the University of Santo Tomas, also graduating as a leadership awardee. Without further ado, let us all welcome our speaker, Mr. Rafael Luis Lopez.
Hello, Rhett. Hello, Nico. And hello, everyone. I'm so excited to talk about our topic today. Though I can't see them virtually, I know and I feel them through our chat box and whatnot. So let's get the ball rolling. So can we have the slides, please? All right. So our topic for today at this hour is about all about survival tools. But of course, I won't teach you how to make fire and those things. I'll teach you about, or I'll tell you about necessary skills that you have to know for you to win at work. So let's go to the next slide. All right, there you go. So before we start, can you look at the chat box and can you put in the chat box your location and one skill that you learned during this pandemic? Your location and one skill that you learned during this pandemic. So if you're using YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, I am sure that you'll be able to write it down in the chat box. So why I'm asking this, it's because, it's the perfect time to learn about new skills. It's time to upskill yourself. And that's why I'm focusing on this topic about skills upskilling. Right. From Alexi, I see one here. She or he said that she's from CDO. Wow. Layo in fairness. From CDO and she learned how to bake. Wow. Pwede bang padala dito sa Manila? Medyo masaya yung mga baking na yan eh. And from Inday ng Taon, Pampanga Survival. Grabe naman yung survival. But I understand that in this pandemic, survival is important. And that's one skill or that's a skill that no one can teach you. It's different from different aspects. How about you, Rip? Before we move forward, what's the one skill that you learned?
Um, as a student, kasi we have a lot of these projects. So I guess one skill that I really needed to learn during the pandemic is how to edit videos, because I've been posting on different social media then. Like for example, TikTok, I've been
Mhm.
posting educational videos there. So I really needed to learn how to adapt to this digital world. So it's been
Mhm.
very helpful naman.
All right, thank you, Red. Perfect. A technical skill that people would really need to know at this point, especially you, the age of social media right now. It's important to know these technicalities. So anyway, let's get the ball rolling. Let's talk about our survival tools. So what's our objective and what will we talk about today? So we have five things that we have to talk about: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and trust. These things you would usually see them online as life skills. They say that these necessary life skills are important for employers nowadays because these things will make employees thrive in their work environment. So to tell you about this more, let's just talk about the why and the how. So these skills are usually called soft skills, but these skills will help you manage activities and challenges in work and even beyond work. So sabi ko nga, life skills in general. So let's get started. Let's get started with our first one, communication. So basahin muna natin to. It says here that it's not really them, but most of the time, when people ask, if only I knew what you wanted, and you won't really react. In our context, in the Filipino context, you would sometimes be shy to tell other people what you wanted or what you need. But as expected, in communication, you should answer these things to make the process faster. So next slide, please. All right. So in communication, basically, it's you sharing ideas, verbal and non-verbally. So how do you, or why do we have to do this? We spend a lot of time at work and even in other places communicating. Right now, I'm communicating to you. And even through the chat box, I see your communication process happening. And the next, everything from sending an email, short text, a meeting, and even is communication. Like what Rhett is doing, posting on TikTok, regardless if it's a dance, regardless if it's about life skills, motivation, it's still communication happening. And the next, communication can make processes quicker. So imagine this. Imagine that you are in a work environment. You are at work. First time working as a fresh grad, and the boss would ask you, what would you like or what would you like to know? And you kept silent. That's, of course, obviously that's not communication. But when you tell that boss or that person what you need to learn and to understand for you to be able to do the job, then it will make the process quicker. But how do we do this? Next slide. Ayan. So how do we communicate? So there are 3 points. But how do we properly communicate? We have to know that communication is not just words. It's not just a verbal communication. It's also non-verbal. It says here on the right top point, you're not just talking with your words. You're talking with your actions, your voice, with your emotions, with your eyes. For perspective, I want you to imagine this. Imagine that someone is approaching you without anything on top of your mind while he or she is approaching you. And he or she says, I have good news. What would be the first thing that comes to your mind? I have good news. Blank stare, monotonous voice, your the even the smile isn't even there. Is that you think good news is coming your way? Compare it to this. I have good news. Or I have good news for you. So the tone of your voice, the eye contact, and the movement of your mouth and even your hand says a lot about the impact of the words that you are saying. It says here that 70% of communication, 7% of the communication process is just the words. The rest are non-verbal communications, including the way your hands move, the way you stare, your posture, and as well as other things. Even the tone of your voice is a communication that people observe. Next up, communicate empathetically. So for example, a while ago, if you see someone saying to you, I have good news, is that empathetic to the words that he's using, he or she is using? I have good news. Put emotions and understand and take to account what and how you are saying the message that you want them to understand. Because with this, you're driving the communication or you're driving the message more adherent to what you are saying. And then lastly, share your ideas. Communications is about sharing your ideas, and sharing your ideas with enthusiasm will drive your point across the meeting room. Make sure that you share your processes or your ideas with full of emotions. I remember one time when I was a fresh grad. Well, it was my second job. It was my second job in as a learning and development professional, and I was given the task to talk to some high executives. And when we were talking, I was quite shy at first because I did not know why I was there. I did not know if I had the caliber to be there. But what I did is I mustered up all the courage that I had. And I reminded myself that I was very, very, sorry about that. I was very, very enthusiastic and inspired to do the work that I did. So they felt that emotion. They felt what I was trying to say, not because of my words, but because of the tone of my voice. So remember, communication is not just the words, but also what you are portraying or how you say it. All right, let's go to the next slide. Next slide is all about, of course, collaboration. All right, let's go to the picture. Collaboration. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure if this is the correct way or if this is how the wheel was made, but this is what the point. This is the point. In collaboration, you work with other people or with a group to produce an outcome. What kind of outcome would depend on how the group would work on it. Next slide. All right. So why is collaboration important? Because we know that our world is interconnected. You see, right now, I'm talking to you, and you're from, if I'm not mistaken, you're from CDO in Pampanga, and Rhett here is from Manila, and Nico is from Las Piñas. Imagine how much distance, and yet we can still collaborate. The technology now really promotes communication and collaboration for us to be more efficient in the work that we have. More brains means more challenges to be solved, or better challenges, or better solutions to the problems that we solve. But how do we do this? Next slide, please. How do we do this? How do we collaborate? We float. FLOAT. We have to be flexible. We have to learn. We have to be open. We have to be accountable. We have to have teamwork. These things are important. For example, the flexibility. This is important because not all people are adherent or are alike like you. But since we're collaborating, you have to really talk to other people as well. So you have to be flexible on how you communicate, how you do things, and how you become um, to produce outputs and learn. You learn from other people. You're not perfect. That's what we're doing right now. I'm not perfect, but I'm sharing with you the knowledge that I have so that you would learn and try to apply this. Right now, our process is collaborative. I'm not the only one who will be speaking. Later on, you can ask questions. So this question will open up learnings for me and for you as well. So speaking of opening up, you should be open. You should be open to other people as well. Meaning, you should allow yourself to be open-minded. Be any open-minded ka ba sa business, ah? I have nothing against that, but that's not the context that I'm sharing with you. The open-mindedness that I'm saying is that open to get feedback, open to get learnings, open for other people to tell you that what you're doing can be improved later on. Next one, accountable or being accountable, having accountability. So having more people means people or the project or the activity can be a lot of people can collaborate on this. And lastly, of course, teamwork. So just lately, let me just share you a story that collaboration was at work. Lately, I was my team and our team and I were is actually we're still currently having a team building with a certain group, and it's nice to see collaboration working here, especially during the calamities that has passed the past 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And this collaboration wasn't just within a group, it was even with other people, people that are on the ground, people who knows the situation there. Collaboration is important for everyone because it makes work more wide in the sense that a lot of people gets connected. Networking is important for us to understand and for us to produce the best work that we can. So that's two so far, communication and collaboration. So at this point, I'd like to invite Rhett here. Let's open the floor for any questions because of course, like what I said, collaboration nga, hindi lang to one way. So please put down at the chat box if you have any questions so far. You can see it right now actually. All right, Rhett?
If you have any questions for our speaker, go ahead and comment on whatever social media platform you are watching this on, and I will be here to cater to them later. But sir, I have a question because
Yeah, go ahead.
so there are some people who might argue that I'm much more of an independent person, or I like to keep to myself. I'm much more productive when I'm doing work alone. What do you have to say about people like that? And are there any tips on growing out of that specific mindset?
Yeah, actually, I'm an HR practitioner, so I really know that they ask this question. And on top of my mind, I think to myself, is this a trick question or is this a trap? There's nothing wrong with working independently. But again, remember float. We have to learn from other people. We have to be open to other people for us to show or to produce the best results that we can. It it's not a it's there's a bigger task, and this task you can't really do it alone. But some people say that they can. But during these times, you would see to yourself that you could assess yourself. Am I doing it the best that I can as compared to when I'm doing it with other people? But I understand that there are introverts who choose not to do it or to work with other people. But it's the value of the other people that's an add-on to what you're doing.
Thank you
All
so
right.
we have
Okay,
another
yeah,
here.
I saw. Can you read it for us?
Yeah, from Inday ng Taon. Paano if you wanna collaborate pero yung ka-work mo ayaw? So I guess she's talking about conflict within team members. So what do you have to say about
Yeah. Okay. So number one thing, oh my gosh, that's difficult. But it's present. You try to be open in the sense that he's not collaborating with you. Hindi siya nagko-collaborate sa'yo dahil may rason siya. You find out that reason because at the end of the day, like what we said, remind him or her that you guys are accountable in the work that they're doing. So two things was highlighted there. Be open to the possibility that there is reason behind it, and you understand it. You learn what that reason is, and then remind this person that he or she is accountable to the output that you guys will do. All right. Hopefully, in Dimension, I answered your question well. Okay, so let's go forward. You can still leave your questions here in our chat box. Rhett's taking note of it if ever you have any questions. Correct, Rhett?
That's right. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them on the comment section of any social media platform you are watching this on. And later we will be having a Q&A portion for Mr. Rafael. So now, Mr. Rafael, go ahead with your presentation.
All right, thank you, Rhett. So just to reiterate what Rhett said, I'm allotting 15 to 30, yeah, 15 minutes of my time for Q&A because I totally believe in communication and collaboration and the rest, and you will get more outputs from here. So moving forward, next thing, what do you see here? You see here a problem and then squiggly lines, a lot of squiggly lines going to a solution. This is a concrete example of not one thing not to do if you're critical thinking. Why so? Critical thinking is actually having a logical process to find a solution. So if this is how you think, squiggly lines going around and around, maybe you have to look back and get a process in it. So how can we identify or find the best solution logically to our problems is the definition of critical thinking. So let's move forward to our next slide. So why do we do this? Because there are a lot of information available. There are a lot. Just type into Google life skills and you will find around 1,000 or even more possible answers to what life skills is. And there are certain information that are not correct. There are informations that are not true. So that's why you have to analyze and make the right decisions on which information you will check or get. Creating the right solution is basing your information to the right information. There are sometimes, or we sometimes have too much information, and we call this analysis by paralysis by analysis. So too much information coming into your head, too much knowledge, too much feedback, too much of everything. So that's why you have to have logical steps in order for you to produce the right answers to our problems. Next slide. So how do we do this? Or how do we think critically? Basically, we think rather critically by being organized and being rational. Think organized meaning think systematically and have a process on how you are thinking, but be and still be rational with what you are doing. Have clear motives and get the information that totally addresses the problems that you are getting. Sometimes you're getting a lot of different informations that are not really necessary for your cause or for your problem rather. And then of course, if you are organized and if you are rational, be curious, be creative, but also have skepticism and humility to understand that you're not always correct. So these things are important for any positions or any problems in in our how do you say this? Any problems in our life, basically. You be organized. You make sure you put step one, step two, step three, and then be rational. I'm asking this question because it's necessary for me to move forward. I'm asking this question because I need to find out why I'm doing this. So rational and organized. All right, next slide, please. So now let's go or move forward to our second to the last soft skills or technical necessary skill that we are going to present today. This one is ah, medyo yung kanina, hindi ko sure kung kanino nakuha yung inspiration talaga eh. Dun sa pag-collaborate or dito sa creativity. Sabi kasi dito, the mother is saying, all you've done all day is to chisel. Do something useful like helping your brother drag those rocks uphill. But when you look at it in a perspective right now, since we understand that it's he's making a wheel and he's making um, the work easier, it's creativity. Sharing novel and correct or how do you say novel and logical results to something that's not easily solved. So let's go to the next slide. One thing that you have to remember that creativity is not just for those who do videos, posters, and whatnot. Creativity is for everyone because here we are looking for logical but new ways to solve problems. Because we have to stay relevant nowadays. Information is coming in fast. A lot of things are happening right now. So coming up with relevant solutions and novel solutions or new ideas to a problem makes one a relevant person. We also use creativity because we make calculated decisions. These calculated decisions are important for us. We don't just make rapid decisions. We don't just make in solutions that are decisions rather that are on top of our mind. It's creative, yes, but is it calculated? So come up with the relevant solutions to share our novel ideas for us to be able for us to be able to make calculated decisions. All right. So now through the chat box. Oh, so rather, let's go to the next slide. Sorry. So how do we do this? To the chat box, can you share with us what this image symbolizes? Ano ibig sabihin na image na to? It shares with us why or how we can be creative. All right. Maybe that can help me understand or share with us what he thinks this is.
Well, parang for picks one word, no. If I have to guess, I think it's thinking outside the box.
Perfect. So thinking, hindi namin pinag-usapan to ni Rhett, alam niya talaga yon. So like what he did, he pulled out information from what he is doing or his schema and applied it here and thought of a creative answer to the question. So how do you be creative? You think outside the box. You find novel ideas and apply these novel ideas to problems that we have. Yes, Inday ng taon. I love Inday ng taon. Very active siya. Thinking outside the box, you're correct. Alright, so we can forward. But before we move forward, I see a question here or something that we can put up. Can you share from Adonis Evan P. Basa Jr.? Can you share tips on thinking critically and efficiently? Share tips to think critically and efficiently. Well, there's a lot of ways to do this, but for me, the best way to do this is following steps. You have to have certain, there's a framework. I didn't add it here, but there's a framework that we could use I'm not sure if it's in Google, but you can search framework for critical thinking. Number one thing that you have to do is get things clear. Ask questions, ask why, so what, empty your bucket of information that might be needed, and listen or list down the answers to these questions. Now, when you do this, reach a conclusions. From these questions and from the answers that you got, get facts, observe, get experiences from others, get your belief systems in aligned, and get assumptions, calculated assumptions that are based on the answers to the questions that you asked a while ago. Then make a decision. But you don't just make any kind of decision. You have to make sure that there is a set of criteria already in place. So our framework for critical thinking is get clear, reach conclusions, and make decisions. Hopefully that answered your question, Mr. Aldonis, and you can move forward. So let's go to the next slide. Or since we're already entertaining questions, uh, Rhett, maybe there are questions that I have missed.
Well, right now there are still not yet a lot of questions we have. So for the audience, if you have any questions, this would be a great opportunity to comment them down below as we are seeing them live on our screens right now, and I can go ahead and ask Sir Raf those questions. But sir, I think they're asking on tips on how to think outside the box. So can
Thinking
you
outside the box. Yeah, thinking outside the box is quite peculiar to different people. How do you do it is you identify first what's already given. For example, if to change a tire, you need certain tools. Okay, I can't think of a creative way to change a tire in a different plastic, so let me change that. Um, okay, this one. Maybe you have a problem. This is an example that I experienced before. In learning and development, you do training needs analysis to identify specific problems or specific training needs. The usual thing that trainers do or learning and development specialists do are surveys. That gets the job done, but it's not enough in my perspective. So thinking outside the box is finding novel or new ideas to address a problem that has already a solution that's made. It's a Japanese concept called Kaizen. I think we could apply it here, or continuous improvement. Kaizen means there is already a solution, but you find better ways to address the solutions. So number one thing is to identify the solutions that's already on hand and apply creativity to look for other solutions that would better address the problem that you already have. So that's that. I saw one comment from Jules Carrion. Thinking outside the box is BDO. We find ways beyond what is given. Just true. That's one reason why I really put down creativity here because that's one life skill that people misinterpret, that most of the people say if you're creative, you do PowerPoint presentations that are nice, you do layouts that are beautiful, that are appealing, aesthetic, you do videos that are enticing. But just like what Sir Jules said in our comment section in Facebook, you find ways and go beyond what we already have. There is already a set solution, but since you are creative, and since you are creative, you make sure that you continuously improve on this. So thank you for that, Sir Jules. So let's move forward to our next slide. This is a meme or a comic strip I saw in 9gag. The whale was like, trust fall, and then the people jumped off board. So it doesn't really give my message across, but it was funny. So that's why I put it there. But trust, Pilipino tayo dito. Ang dami natin Pilipino. Wala pa ako nakikita hindi Filipino. So you would understand this. Trust. It's a big word. Ang laki-laki ng word na trust. Not because it's concise, blah, 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 but because trust is an abstract word that is not being taught or being shared most of the time. But it's important. It's a life skill. Trust is a multiplier. What do I mean by that? Can you move to the next slide? So sabi ni Stephen Covey, strategy times execution equals results. That's the conventional thinking. Meaning, if you have the strategy and you execute the strategy well, there's results. But when you put trust in the equation, strategy times execution times trust equals better results. Trust is a multiplier in the sense that if you have trust, the process would go faster, the results would be better. People would understand the process because they trust their leaders. People would know, the leaders would trust the employees because there's a certain sense of, of understanding of why he or she is doing this. So conventional formula is it's still applicable, but you put in trust to make sure that people would understand or people would see the value of what you're doing. I also get this from Covey. Human connections are held together by trust. I think I told this to you in collaboration that human connections or we are interconnected, especially now in the age of social media, in the age of technology. But because of trust, it is held together. It's a foundation of trust that we have. It's a foundation that makes the bridge stronger. It makes the string more thick to hold on to more weight, and it makes companies develop themselves because they trust in the employees. But trust as a skill, as a necessary skill, is not just for others. Trust is also for yourself. Having trust in yourself is also a multiplier. It's the same concept. If you have trust in yourself, you could do a lot of things better. You could do certain skills, or you could apply certain skills that you think you are not able to do, but now you're doing it because you trust yourself and you know that the output is already good. I asked you a while ago what kind of skills that you learned, and I saw a while ago that there are a lot of skills, baking, survival, and a lot of other things. But you did this because you had trust in yourself. You were able to do this because you had trust in yourself. So when thinking about trust, you don't just think about other people. You also think of yourself. It's quite abstract. Hindi siya madaling intindihin dahil hindi naman tayo pumapasok sa isang seminar na sasabihin na trust in yourself. Walang ganun na seminar. That's why I want to highlight this right now. That trust is a multiplier. So use it. So before I wrap up, before I wrap up, yeah, I think I could wrap up na. Can you see the next slide, please? O, di ba? Sinabi ko na lahat yun. Pero hindi ko pa sinasabi sa inyo kung paano gamitin yung trust. So like what I said, trust in yourself and trust others. Trust in yourself that you can communicate with others. Trust in yourself that you could collaborate. Also trust in others that they can think critically, that they can be creative as well. So have trust, communicate, collaborate, think critically, and be creative. So before we end, I'd like again to open the floor. I told you 15 minutes. I'd like to open the floor to questions. And if walang questions, kami na lang ni Sir Rep mag-uusap. I think he prepared questions for us. So while you're writing it down, you can connect with me through LinkedIn. It's Rafael Luis Lopez. And you can email me through rblopez96@gmail.com. And then go, Sir Rep. We could entertain as much questions that we can in the 10 to 15 minutes that you have.
That's right. For all of our viewers here, again, please comment all of your questions in the comment section below, and I will be entertaining them on behalf of Sir Raf over here. Thank you so much, Sir Raf, for that. I actually have a lot of questions for you. So,
Perfect.
speaking from personal experience, I see my brother working from home in a work from home setup. So, how do we maintain that level of trust and collaboration, considering that we're just stuck in our rooms talking through online platforms? Because you said, Karina, especially now in the time of social media, we're much more connected. But are there also hindrances because of our situation right now that can um, be a hump towards achieving that same level of collaboration?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I think I didn't hear the last part.
How do we maintain the same level of trust, teamwork, and collaboration in the workplace, considering we're all, some of us are in a work from home setup?
Actually, that's the answer already. You maintain collaboration and teamwork by having trust. There are a lot of most companies nowadays are employing a work from home setup. I'm not going to drop names, but there are companies that are very strict when it comes to attendance. They they require people to time in and time out and give them how do uh, submit outputs per day. But on the other hand, there are companies who allow people to just be productive, allow themselves to do the thing that they need to do without having very, very strict monitoring. So I'd like to ask you, which one is more efficient?
Well, I like to think na giving employees the autonomy is much more empowering compared to having strict deadlines and supervision. Well,
Okay, that's true, but um that's also arguable. But because with trust, like what you said, it makes things faster. It makes them more efficient. Imagine yourself being there, sitting there, and you're doing a lot of things. And on the side, you have to do this productivity, monitoring sheet, whatever. So there are a lot of red tapes that are in place. So I hope I answered your question. Did I?
yeah, yeah, you did, you did.
Alright,
So
alright.
while our audience are still coming up with questions themselves, I do have another one because we talked about
Oh,
setups, Professor. And because of this, we've been hearing the term burnout a lot more. So may I ask if you have any tips on how to handle burnout and maybe if you can define burnout for us, Naren, as well.
okay. I'm not the best person to define what burnout is because though I graduated with a degree in behavioral science, I didn't really focus on this. But I can share you tips on how to address burnout. Um, Communicate. Most of the time, communication is the answer to most problems, especially when it comes to teams. So make sure that your boss knows that you are already burnt out. And if not, you tell him or her. if he already knows and he or she already, but he or she already knows, but he or she doesn't address this, it's time for you to collaborate. Remind him or her and your teammates that you're accountable. You're collaborating with each other as a team. You're a team because you're accountable to each other. And then if all else fails, use critical thinking. Adjust your time. Make sure that you're allotting enough time for rest as well. And then be creative on what you're doing. Communicate the problem. Remind people to collaboration that you are accountable to each other. If all else fails, allot time through critical thinking on what to prioritize. Make sure you have rest and be creative with the solutions that you're making.
Thank you so much, Sir Raf. For those who just tuned in to our live stream, we are having the question and answer portion with Mr. Rafael Lopez. So if you have any questions regarding the necessary skills you need in the workplace, go ahead and ask your questions right now, and I will be here to entertain them. But while we're at it, Sir Raf, I have a question here from our organizer.
Go.
So he mentioned that people have different ways of learning. So how do you handle slow learners as compared to fast learners? And also, what are your tips for employees who are slow learners?
I don't like to call them slow. It's better to call them challenged or challenged learners. And to address this, we have to understand first what the problem is, why he or she needs help. We employ critical thinking and identifying or asking the right questions. Why is he slow or challenged? Why is he not being able to cope up with the things that he has to do? Why is he this, that, this? And then you create a solution, or rather, what do you call this? You create answers to those questions. When you find answers, you make sure you have the criteria in order to make decisions. Because remember, we're accountable. I can't stress that enough, especially now that each and every one of us are accountable to each other. Because though we are set apart, we still have this certain sense of being in a team to collaborate. So once you identify the decision or identify the problem, then you collaborate and communicate. Then you find out or you tell him or her how you could move forward. Then if all else fails, you continue communicating. So I'm sorry if I'm going back and forth to these five things. It's just that I'm trying to. It's related. It's everything that you're asking is related now. So please continue if you have any questions. There's a non-related question here. No, that's not my cap. That's my grandfather's cap. Uh, ibang webinar na lang yun. All
Okay,
right.
for our viewer who asked that, if you have any questions for Sir Raf, go ahead. We do have a one from Dana Sassis. So, hi, Sir Raf.
Yeah.
Do you have more tips on how we can trust ourselves in order to communicate and collaborate more effectively?
I like how she constructed her question. Yes, she's asking how it concerns that regard. Trusting yourselves is acknowledging your strengths and working on your weaknesses. This is basing on the SWOT analysis. You have to make sure that you know what your strengths are in order to communicate better and to collaborate more efficiently. The question you have to ask yourself is, why am I having problems or challenges in communication and collaboration? Again, the critical thinking process. And then when you answer this, um, you can address the problem. But personally, just to give a concrete answer, I how I trusted myself or tips on how I trusted myself. I gave myself um account. I made myself accountable to the things that I'm doing. Like for example, I have a project. I make sure that I list the things to do to make sure that I am accountable, and I share this with others by communicating to them that I'm doing this. So if the time comes that I am not able to do it, then she or he communicates it to me. So it's a two-way thing. I'm thinking of a concrete example of this. Hmm. There was one, oh, there was one time I was we were our organization was organizing a huge event. It was back in 2018, and I trusted myself well enough. I did the things that I have to do, but it wasn't smart trust. So people tried to communicate with me. People tried to collaborate with me. So therefore, the trust that I had in myself wasn't really trust. It was maybe overconfidence. So I learned from there that you have to be open and you have to know that there are certain limitations when you there are certain limitations that you have. Trusting yourself means again knowing your strengths and weaknesses. So Miss Dana, I hope I answered your questions and please keep your questions coming. I
Yes.
think Sir Jules has this question.
Yep. From Jules Carrion, vice versa naman po doon sa question ni Sir Rhett. How to handle challenging learners?
So it's the other way around. So yung boss, yung mahirap. Am
Yes.
I correct? Okay. So if the boss is the problem, it's still the same thing. You communicate to them or him or her that, sir, we have a problem here. But you don't just communicate with them in that sense. I teach you a tool. If you're familiar with this sandwich method, positive, negative, positive, it's quite difficult kasi to communicate with our bosses because ako, feeling ko, baka ma-offend ko sila when I give feedback. But it's a tool and it's a tool that we can use. You say something positive, you tell the negative or the feedback or the thing that you want to change, and then you give a positive again. For example, the boss um, is not communicating with you in a team project. So what you say is, sir, positive. Sir, I understand naman that there are a lot of things on your plate. But do you think negative? Do you think we can improve on the communication aspect of our group? And then positive again. I appreciate your efforts, sir, and we hope that we could move forward better here. So, how to address a difficult boss or a difficult supervisor is really constant, respectable communication with each other. All right, Jules. I hope I answered your question.
He
And
actually did
oh,
clarify and he said, "No, sir, I'm the alternative team leader." So I guess he's talking about leading a group with challenging members. But I feel like from what I learned from you, it's still the same way of having respect and communicating. Am I right, sir? Or do you have any other?
yeah. Well, just to address this, if just correct me if I'm wrong, Jules. You're the leader and you have challenging learners. In that context, you should remember that though you are an alternate for me is like you're not permanently the team leader there. You remind these people that you are accountable to them at this point. So you remind them that we are a team. I'm doing this not just because I have to, but because any outputs that happens here from here then on is our output, not just mine. So, Jules, if I answered it more uh, head on, hopefully I did. If not, please continue. Okay, we have 3 more minutes. I think we can answer one more question.
To the audience, if you have any more questions, please take this opportunity to ask Mr. Rep anything you'd like about working in a workplace and the necessary skills you need to equip yourselves with, especially during the time of the pandemic. It's all very new to us. So go ahead and shoot your shot, ask our speaker any of your questions in the comment section below. But while we are waiting, sir, I do have another question, if I may.
I love it. Sure, Rhett, go ahead.
So, I'm not sure how often this happens in a workplace, but there is, I guess, such a thing as a toxic workplace where people don't usually communicate. And if they do, it's usually behind the backs of their bosses and employees. So, how do you handle that sort of toxic workplace? And maybe as an employee, what's the first step to overcome that?
Okay, so before I answer that, let me just address you, kay Jules. Yeah, it's quite difficult to make the message come across, especially if close-minded yung mga tao. I don't know who your employees are, but there are certain people who are close-minded. But you have to find out why aren't they understanding the message. It's important to be critical in the way that they're thinking. Actually, mali nga yung ginawa ko na in-assume ko na close-minded sila. You have to ask the right questions in order to get the correct solutions. So, to address yung kay Rep, toxic work environment, number one thing that I do is this is not related to this, but before I enter or before I sign the contract sa mga companies that I've worked with, I make sure that the company's culture is what I want. So for the incoming graduating students, make sure that the culture of the company that you are in is what really is aligned to the culture that you want. So that's one thing that you can do. The next thing that you could do is maybe and be open that maybe the culture is like this because it's effective for the company. You could also communicate. Let them know na, sir, ma'am, use the sandwich method. Alam kong bago pa lang ako, I understand the culture is like this, but please lang, ang hirap ng ginagawa niya sa akin. Something like that, and then close it off with a positive. Communication is very important. You could maybe, we don't have time anymore, but if you could give me a short, concrete example, maybe you could address it more. But maybe we could answer in Dainantoon's question.
Yep.
Right? What if binigay sa'yo ng coworker mo, yan pala nasa screen, yung trabaho niya, tas you resist, tas siya yung, may scandal, my gosh. It, it short answer is, kung trabaho niya, tell the boss. Kung trabaho niya, tell the boss that this is what I'm doing. I have a lot of, this is not on my plate. He's insisting that I should do it. That's the short answer. But there are a lot of things to consider. Why is he doing this? Why is he or she asking you to do the work that it's supposed to be his or her? Ask the right questions, understand. That's the most difficult thing here. That's why we mentioned humility a while ago. In collaboration, we 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 we, we discussed that you have to be humble enough because sometimes I'm not saying that in Dainantoon that's you, but sometimes the problem is not always the other person. So ask the right questions. So there you go. I think we're good. I think I have just 2 slides. Can you put in the 2 slides, sir? Yet? Alright, next slide. So to wrap everything up, we have to make sure that we communicate, collaborate, and think critically, and be creative. Communicate, share your ideas with others to generate information and results. You collaborate, work with other people to achieve these results. Think critically to look for novel solutions and be creative by looking for new and bold ways to address challenges. And finally, next slide, trust. Big word. Trust because it multiplies each other's efforts. Next slide. So maraming salamat po. Thank you so much. So again, you can connect with me through LinkedIn. It's Rafael Luis Lopez. You can email me at rdllopez96@gmail.com. And before we end, I'd like to thank everyone. This is really the way that I give webinars, and I'm happy that the structure of the program allows me to be collaborative with other people. So thank you. I'd like to thank Sir Rhett and Sir Nico, who's behind the scenes. Sir Nico, alam kong nandyan ka lang. Hello! And I'd like to also thank Sir Justin who invited me to this event, and to ASEAN Youth, ESME, and the other partners. Uh, Continue doing this. This is a way of collaboration, and in the new normal, networks and collaborations are important. So, Laban, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much as well, Mr. Sir Rap, for talking about communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and of course, trust, and how it is important in the workplace. So thank you so much for that. And thank you as well to all of the audience who stayed tuned for that webinar, and for everyone who attended this webinar. All of you can get a digital certificate of your attendance. Just go ahead and visit our website at www.sme.ph, or you can click the link that we posted in the comment section below. Again, this webinar is in partnership with the ASEAN Youth Organization, an ASEAN-approved nonprofit organization that spreads awareness of ASEAN to over 200 million young people in Southeast Asia. This webinar is also brought to you by the Rotary Club of Alabang Madrigal Business Park. Lastly, I would like to invite everyone who wants to learn more and increase their knowledge and skills to just go ahead and visit our website at www.sme.ph. Once again, that's www.sme.ph, where we offer a wide range of masterclass courses, those of which you can enroll in based on whatever is relevant to your passion, career, or interests. Once again, this has been a webinar from SB.ph and ASEAN Youth. This has been Rhett. Chiu. Have a great evening.